Hey everybody, it's me, Mel. Welcome to the studio. I'm super excited to have you here today. We're going to paint Pattern Pumpkin. I designed this piece with busy people in mind, or at least people with short attention spans like myself. The longest part of this painting is going to be painting the background black. That's it. The rest of it you can take your time with. Nothing is going to dry. Nothing is going to need to be blended. All you need to do is use your paint pen like a marker and just sketch over your own chalk lines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So the first thing we're going to do is paint our entire canvas black. So I'm going to show you how to do that right here. Hang on. All right, so we're all set up. I've got my canvas here on my work easel, and that's really just so that we can get a better view of it. If you're painting at home, just lay your butcher paper out, spread your canvas on top of it, and you can just paint on your kitchen counter or your dining room table, whatever works for you. I am using an old palette today. It was sitting on my station, and I hate to let anything go to waste. I'm just using one color. So I'm just gonna come over, I've got my paint packet, and you just wanna snip off a little corner. That way we can kind of control the amount that comes out and not squeeze out too much. And I'm just gonna give it a gentle squeeze and let it all just come out like ketchup right there on my plate. And I'm getting a little bit more than the size of a quarter. That's really enough. We're gonna have to do this in 2 layers or 2 coats. So I like to just do one quick and easy. I have my large brush and I'm dipping it in a little bit of water and bringing that over and working it into the edge of my paint. What that's going to do is it's just going to take that paint from being like pudding to being more like heavy cream. And that will just flow a little bit smoother here for us. Now, I like to just do a long sweeping stroke from edge to edge, just like you're sweeping the floor. Back and forth, back and forth. And it's going to be a fairly thin layer. You can see I dripped a little bit. Who cares? I'm going to cover it up. Had just a little bit too much water in my brush. So if you find that happening, you can do a couple of things. Dry off your paintbrush on your towel, or work a little more paint into your brush. And that will also help thicken things up. But you can see I'm just doing sweeping strokes back and forth. And you are going to see brush strokes. Let me bring this forward so you can see. See how things get a little weird and streaky there? I can put thicker paint on and try to cover it. But the best thing to do is to just let it dry. A thin layer dries quickly. And then I'll come back in with one more coat and get it done. We're using acrylic paint, and while it gives very good coverage, it's very difficult, unless you're getting into like super expensive paints, to get one that'll give you, like the perfect coat on the first layer. So that's it. This is your first step and your second. So I'm just gonna recommend that you pause now. Turn on your favorite tunes, take a sip of your beverage, and just chill out and get this painted. It shouldn't take you too long, 15, 20 minutes at the most. Just go over it once. Don't go back and try to fix spots, let them dry. When paint is drying, if it's partially dry and you start agitating it and giving it friction with these bristles, what will happen is you'll start to peel up little bits of paint. And when that happens, you end up with like a little scar on the canvas. So just let it dry. I would say you could hit it with a blow dryer. It'll be ready to go right away. And then you can just put a second coat on it. But remember, you want to get a good even layer of coverage. So if that takes a second layer, that's what it takes. And then I always recommend letting this dry overnight before you start that work with the chalk and the gold paint pen. That's going to be in the next section of the video. Paint is soft, when it's wet, and it starts to dry, and acrylic paint is plasticky, so it gets a little bit soft, and it usually takes a good 6 or 8 hours to cure before you can start using that paint pen without damaging the pen or carving into your canvas a little bit. So it's a 2-parter, this project. All right, so go ahead and pause it. I'm almost done with my first coat. You can finish up yours. We'll let them dry. Go ahead and add your second coat before you come back to the video. I'm going to. And that way you can just save yourself a little bit more time. But there you go. A little streaky, but good enough for the first layer. All right, so let it dry, hit it with the blow dryer. Make sure you clean out your brush, and I'll see you soon. All right, so I have my black canvas, or my what was white canvas, painted black. And this did take 2 layers, as I stated in the earlier segment. It takes 2 thin layers to get a nice solid coat. And here's the example that I'm working off of. Now, before we even begin, let's talk a little bit about pumpkins. If you've ever been to the pumpkin patch, then you have spent hours searching for the perfect pumpkin. And we all know that it takes forever to find. And when you do, there's usually a funky spot that you have to sort of turn and put against the wall so that nobody sees it. We'll go through that again at Christmas. But the point is, every pumpkin is going to be different. And one of the great things about the design of this piece is that you can completely customize it to your liking. You could take this sunflower in the center and start it over on the side and let it span the length of your whole pumpkin. You can do it all in leaves. You can do it all in swirls. Think of my suggestions like a buffet. Take what you want, leave what you don't. So here we go. All you need now is your piece of chalk. Your canvas should be completely dry. And I'm going to take my example and divide it in half vertically for you. That way you can see we've got a frame of reference. So in order for that to work for you, just take a very light touch and just lightly thin line. We don't want a lot of chalk dust. Divide your own canvas roughly in half vertically. And then we'll do the same thing horizontally. Not worrying about them being perfectly straight or even, rough is good enough in this case. So now we have a reference point that's going to make finding where to put everything else just a little bit easier. So let's start here. We're going to sketch out the shape of our pumpkin. Again, before we start, I want you to use very little light touch on your chalk. We want to have a nice thin line. We're going to be using our paint pens, and those felt tips can soak up a lot of chalk dust and it can make life a little tricky. So we want to use a nice thin line. So I'm going to start here with the center of the top of my pumpkin. And if I measure, this is on my 12 by 16 canvas. If you're using another surface, again, you'd use this sort of X and Y axis and just figure how much of a proportion does it take. It's about a quarter of the way to the top of the canvas. Or in this case, we're just going to measure up 3 fingers. So I'm going to measure up and make a little mark. And from here, I'm going to work on sketching the first lines that are going to create my pumpkin. We can see on the left, I start right at the point and come all the way down to the left edge where it leaves the canvas. So that's easy. I'm going to make a parenthesis and just slightly curve it. Gets a little funky, we can just wipe it off. All right, let's go the other way. We can see this one comes up a little bit. It's a little higher than it is over on the left. So on the right side, I'm going to come up about 2 fingers or just a little bit lower than this center point if I were to drag my finger across. So I'm just going to start over here in the center and bring a line up, and I'm dipping down just a little bit. And like I said, you don't want every line to be perfect. Once we get them all in, then we'll be able to make different decisions. All right, so now I like to come down to this whole front section of the pumpkin that we have there. And it takes up probably a spread hand's width here in the center. So you can just put your hand there and sort of eyeball it. And starting at the top, I'm just going to curve down. 2 curved lines like parentheses, but they don't meet at the bottom. We just want to let that sort of be open. This guy feels a little flat. I'm just going to bring that curve out a little bit more. Smudge away the line I don't want. We can wash it off later. And then I'm just going to divide each section remaining one more time with another curved line or parenthesis. And my only goal here is to make sure that they don't match perfectly. So I'm just going to make one a little thicker than the other. And on the bottom, everything is going out of our point of view. We don't see the very bottom edge of the pumpkin. That's more shading that we don't want to have to worry about. So there we go. We have the basic shape of the pumpkin itself in. And now we're going to come in and add our stem. So at this point, if you want to just pause for a second and correct your lines, feel free. I'll be here when you get back so that you're ready to when you're ready to move along. So here we go. I'm just going to look at the width of the stem here. It doesn't come out quite evenly. It comes out a little more on the right than it does on the left. But it's about 4 fingers in width across here, or a couple of inches. And we don't want to get real hung up on exact measurements because it's a pretty organic little thing here. So I'm just going to make these little notch marks. The right side is a little bit wider than the left. And we can see this just sort of comes up and curls. So I'm actually going to start in the center and just create the rough shape like that. Just a curved line. And now what I can do is bring this left side up here to sort of match, and then bring that right side in and let it run parallel and get more narrow. Now, in order for you to really see what's going on here, we're just going to remove, I'm taking just a dry rag here, and just wiping away that piece because it goes behind. I realize that might have been a little confusing, but pause with it here if you need to, and just play with that curved shape. We just want a funky little shape. My line edges are pretty smooth, although when I chalk them in, they're going to get a little bumpy and lumpy. Again, I'm just going for form right now. So if you need to, pause, take a moment, and when you come back, we'll start our leaves. Okay, let's work on these leaves. You can see they're really more like a heart shape. And we want one on the left and one on the right. So I'm just going to start here and just create a rough little heart shape, not a perfect heart. Let it elongate, be more like a leaf. If you need to, just take your little rag or piece of paper towel and just clean up your lines. We don't want a lot of dust left behind. Remember, it's going to jack up our paint pen. And then we've got one more pointing the opposite direction. So here we go. Let's create one more. I always try to make one side a little bigger than the other when I'm making leaves. And then we'll just sort of connect them here with some little viney bits. And that's all we need to do to get the basic outline of our pumpkin and leaves in. Okay, now we've got our pumpkin sketched out, and we're going to start working on the basic lines of the patterns that we're going to use. So as I've stated all along, if you want to switch up your pattern, please do. You can practice it doodling on some butcher paper, some note paper, and then just use your chalk to sketch it out in your pumpkins. But I'll give you a few basic ideas and points to start with. So here we go. And there we go. Okay, so let's start with our sunflower. Again, I'm just using my chalk to create some sketches. If it's easier, go ahead and remove these lines, our dividing lines now. That way you don't have extra chalk to mess with your paint pen. And you also don't have to worry about extra lines messing with your eyes and where you think things need to go. So with the sunflower, I like to start with the center where we would see the seeds. And we're just going to create a half circle, about halfway up our first curve here. So let me just get that little half circle in. And then we're going to create our petals. And we've got 2 rows. We've got a full row of petals, and then we can see the little peeking bits behind there. Let me start with that full row. So I'm going to start with the center one. And what I want to do is just draw one parenthesis and then a second parenthesis. You'll see that line is a common theme in my work here today. And from there, we're just going to start fanning out these petals. And you just let them space and fit in whatever way works with the shape that you've got going. But again, we're using chalk so we can always erase things and tweak those lines. That's the beauty about this piece is, if you want to, you can completely geek out and really take your time with everything. And if you just want to get down and dirty and get it done, you can do that too. Look at that. Boom. Few parentheses. I got myself most of a sunflower. Now, if you want to be a little extra, which I always do, I'm going to come into these spaces where I have some room and just do the very tip of some more petals behind. So again, just some curved lines that meet at the outer tip there. No, you don't have to be going as fast as I do. I'm a professional. I've painted it before. I'm supposed to be quicker at it. Take your time. Pause when you need to. So here we go. Real quick review. Half circle. And then each full petal is made by creating 2 parentheses. And we just fan them up going down, up, and then fan them out going down. And then we come in and just pop in little tips of other petals in between where we can or want to fill in that space. So go ahead and pause. And when you get back, we're going to do some more parentheses and create our leaves. All right, well, let's make some leaves here. The leaves, again, parentheses, the shape's very similar. They just get a little bit wider. And I have them in varying sizes. So I like to start with the larger ones and then reduce the size based on what sort of space I have to fill in there. So got my chalk, and I'm just going to randomly create a few large leaves with just these parentheses that are connected at the top and the bottom. You can let some of them go off the edge out of our point of view. The bigger they are, the fewer you have to do to fill in your space. So there we have 3.5. And now I'm going to come in and just start creating some smaller ones. And you can put as few or as many as you like. I really like this part when they look like cutouts, like in an eyelet. I think that's fun. All right, there you go. Take your time. I am not going to draw the center line or the little veining lines. Again, less chalk, less hassle. If you really want to do it, feel free. But I'll show you how to add those in as we create those leaves when we use our paint pen. So go ahead and pause, take a moment. We're going to keep working our way to the right, and we're going to come over to our little half circle rainbow shapes next. Okay, here we go. We're getting there, aren't we? Now remember, you can always go, take the dog for a walk, pick a kid up from soccer, do whatever it is that life needs you to do, and come back and make this your special, quiet, relaxing time. So I'm glad you're here. Let's make some half circles. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do is just make a half circle. And then I'm going to create another one inside of it, and then another one. And we can make 3 or 4. I let them go off the edge and then just continue to follow. Let's not forget down here, we'll have to have some. Put one there. And already you can see that while I'm following the same principles as I am on my first version, there are subtle differences on my second one. And that's a function of art, isn't it? The whole point is to get a little dirty and relax and make your own art. One more over here on the edge. Just a couple little lines, a wink and nod in that skinny space. But as I was saying, you could just buy this piece. I could paint it for you for a few extra bucks and sell it to you. The whole idea, though, is to do it yourself and to put a little piece of yourself. Perhaps you're changing the patterns or you're putting your own unique spin on them. That's my favorite part about painting with you guys, is checking out the crazy stuff that you come up with sometimes. And you do amazing work. It's all very original. And I'm like I said before, I'm glad you're here with me. All right, let's do some swirls, shall we? These little swirls. We're just going to create a curved line like we're making a spiral. Let me show you one. Just going to start here in the center and make a big one. And just spiral. Almost like an at symbol, but without the little a in the middle. And that's it. If you want, you can come off on the other side with a little smaller one as a flourish. And we can just start adding these in wherever you like. Now, in this version, I put little leaves on them. I'm not going to do that in this one. Every once in a while, you have to edit yourself. And sometimes when I'm done with the painting, I think, oh, that might not have been the best choice. But that's the great thing about what I do, is I get to go back in and do it again. If you do find yourself in that position, you can always wait for your gold paint pen to dry and then take your black paint and go in and cover it, and you can repeat this process. I wouldn't encourage doing that too many times. You're going to end up with some bumps and lumps in your surface, and it won't look as flat or as smooth. And bumps are harder to make clean lines on. But you certainly will have the opportunity, if you want, to go in and just touch a few things up. The biggest thing to remember when you're working on corrections like that is to let a layer dry. If you need to, get your blow dryer out and hit that thing, let it get completely dry, and then go back at it. But that's the beauty about painting at home, is we have that luxury of taking our time and having the materials there and being able to do it. All right, well, if you're not quite there yet, go ahead and pause. I'm going to come in and show you the final little section of our pumpkin here with the candy corn. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is draw a triangle, but I'm not really making those tips very pointy. And then I'm just going to draw 2 lines across it, dividing it roughly into thirds. And then I repeat that, letting them point in different directions and making them different sizes. As with all the other areas, we can let things go out of our point of view. Remember, the more you do, the fewer you have to do. That one, we only see part of it, so it looks like an A. But I'm just going to continue placing a few in here. And just trying to generally fill up my space here. Whoops. Okay, and one more. All right. There you go. Just a few. And I made a little boo-boo here. Not going to worry about it. I'll correct it when I put in the paint pen. Let's talk about the leaves. Now, I'm not going to sketch the lines in for the leaves, but when we do the paint pen, just like over here, we're just going to follow those curved lines. Same thing with this texture here that we've got going on in our stem. What is it, an elephant? I don't know what I'm thinking. All right, so this is a great point. You want to get to here. Here. We want to get to this point where we've got a rough sketch in. And then when you're ready, come on back. I'll be here. For the next step, you're going to need your gold paint pen and a scratch piece of paper. The whole point of that is to just use something to get that paint pen flowing. So get yourself together when you're ready. Get a refill, have a drink for me, and I'll see you soon. All right, so I've got my gold paint pen. Mine I've used before, so it's going to look a little bit different. But when you remove the lid, you'll see that right here, oh, that's hard to get into frame, isn't it? Let's try this. There we go. The tip should be just clear, or not clear, but sort of a yellowy felt. And you can tell that it doesn't have any of that metallic gold in it. Go ahead, put your lid right back on there, and then hold your thumb over it and shake it. And you'll hear a little bead or a little ball bearing in there start to move around, and it'll start to move more quickly. And you just keep shaking, shaking, shaking until it's just sliding, sort of like with a bottle of nail polish. And then you can take your top off, and this is where your scratch paper is going to come into handy. I use this old canvas board for all of my paint pens, have for years. Push it down until that tip disappears and hold it there. You may need to hold it for a full minute. I'm not going to hold mine that long because all my paint's going to start to flood. But hold it until when you lift it up, you see gold paint right there on that tip. Sorry, that shot's a little blurry, but you get my drift. And you should be able to move that paint pen and leave a little trail. If it's still a little sketchy or scratchy, go ahead and do it until the paint is flowing freely. Now, I always recommend for this section of the painting to lay your canvas flat. Gravity will be your friend as the paint flows down. So I'm going to rearrange my shot here, and I'll be right back and we'll get busy. So get everything flat and we'll get going. Okay, well, getting a completely flat shot was a little bit trickier than I thought, but I think we're pretty good here. So I'm going to start with the interior here. Oops, sorry about that. I'm going to start working right here on my sunflower. And the first thing I'm going to do are the outer segments. So paint's flowing in my pen, and I'm holding it like a marker. And my hand is going to be in the way. It's almost impossible to get a good shot here without a cameraman, but I don't have that budget. So I'm holding it like a marker and just sliding, not lifting up the tip, nothing. Just a gentle push. The thicker of a line you want, you'll have to go over it again, but use a nice, gentle, just very nice, thin touch. If you push really hard, the line will get thick because your tip will start to spread and it won't get thin again. So you can only control that by just using a lighter touch. And I am trying to stay just to the outside of my chalk line so that I don't get a lot of chalk all up in the tip of my marker. I'm also keeping this guy around because my paint pen is older. So every once in a while, if it gets a little chalk, I just tap it until that paint starts to flow. And then I just carry on business as usual. So like I said, I'm trying to stay just inside or outside of those chalk lines. And I'm just tracing. So here's where you realize, you could do some drinking. You can listen to your favorite podcast. You can binge watch something on Netflix. You can just relax. Oops, sorry. There we go. Getting that chalk in there again. Now, sometimes a line gets a little thicker in one spot than it does another. Ooh, I just did it right there. I'm going to leave it alone. What I can do is come back in and clean it up later with some black paint, or I can just remember that it's art and that every once in a while it does what it wants. There are no mistakes, just happy accidents, right? Isn't that what Bob Ross told us? So I'm just going through, and you can see I'm changing up some of my lines, not even following, because I kind of like what I've got going on better here. Let me turn this just a little bit so that I can reach up here. And I'm just carrying on, going over each line. We're going right next to it, one by one. Nice light touch. So feel free to pause me and come back whenever you like, or you can hang out. At some point, you're going to need to pause me though, because I do move a little bit quicker. Don't race to catch up. We're not at the gym. It's not a competition. Just breathe and relax. Enjoy yourselves. All right, I've got that basic line of the sunflower in there. It's a little hard to see because of the chalk, but I don't want to try to wipe that chalk away until this is completely dry. So I'm going to come in next. Go ahead and pause. I'll come right back and show you the sort of the details that we can do here to our sunflower. All right, let's get you a good view. I realize that's a little twisted, but it'll work. Okay, so center the sunflower. Pick whatever design you want. I am partial to circles. And a second there. So I just like to outline a few circles and then just fill them in. I like to do the bigger ones first so that they hold space, and not all of them are in our point of view. Some I do partially going off the edge there. But the whole idea is the same as everything else we've been doing. Fill in the big space first and then fit things in around them. So I've got some pretty big circles here. Now I'm going to start doing some smaller ones, even some teeny tiny ones, little dots. And I have this sort of spiral effect. It's a result of the felt tip of the marker in my paint, and it's drying in sort of a cool fashion. If you like it, which I do, leave it. If you don't, let it dry completely and just go over it one more time. I don't know if you can see that sort of spirally effect going on there. I've got a little bit of a glare. There's just a little spiral sort of brush stroke going on, but I like it, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, so next I want to come in and just do a quick little sort of stem line or vein line. And I just like to do sort of a wide, long curve of an S. It's like if you took an S and stretched it out from the top and the bottom. But you can do a single curve line. You don't have to have a double. It's just sort of my thing, so I'm going with it for this. Right down. It doesn't go all the way to the tip, but again, it's your sunflower. Do your thing. And then where they're visible in the back row, I'm just going to add little partial bits there, just to sort of fill in some of that space. Again, that chalk is visible, so it's a little funky. When we get done, we'll wipe it off, and we'll see how stunning that really is. The other thing is, once I get all the chalk off, I like to just do another once over if I need to and clean up some lines, but we'll cover that in a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to do the leaves. Come on back when you're ready. Okay, so we're going to take care of our leaves. Still using that paint pen and just going over my lines, just on the inside or just on the outside. And then I'm going to divide it in half with a line from tip to tip. And then I'm just going to create some V's here to create those leafy segments or veins. And I like to keep these fairly clean and straight. I don't know why I like that sort of funky look, but you can make them curvy. You can make them really natural and sort of spider webby. That would be fun. You could do a spider web in them. But we're just going to go through each one. So you can pause and come back when you're done, or just hang out with me. Sorry, I had to turn my board there a little bit so you can see the next piece, little part I'm working on. And again, I apologize that my hand is blocking the view, but as a one-woman show, I'm still learning camera angles and getting this thing dialed in. So if you have any suggestions, message me. I'll totally take them. Okay. We're just going to keep going. One thing to be mindful of, try not to set your hand over a section that you just painted with your gold paint pen. You really don't want to smear gold paint all over this. I did that on an earlier version, and it had me cursing for a while. So don't make that same mistake. Now you can rotate, by the way, if you want these to go different directions. Whoops, I already started that one, so I can't change it. But I'll do this one going in opposite direction. Sometimes my lines come out over the edge. Can't really see it, just a tiny little bit there. There you go, you can see it. Again, I can clean it up. I'm more likely to come in later with a little bit of black and just try to touch that up versus trying to make the line thicker to camouflage it. It's just easier. Because then once you make one line thicker, you got to make all the lines thicker, and you go down a deep rabbit hole and it's hard to get you back. I know, I've been there. So if you're at all type A, this painting is a beautiful sort of paint because you can completely geek out and you can also make yourself miserable. But if you're type A, you understand that struggle because it's a daily way of life. At least it is for me. I can't speak for all type A folks, but most of the ones I met in the studio understand what I meant. So. All right, just a couple more. Again, take your time. Do your lines the way that you want to. Just don't put your hand in wet paint. That's the best piece of advice I have for this section. All right. And then I'm going to do that segment line starting in the middle there at the top and just pull this line down. Now you can see I'm moving fairly slowly and cautiously. And I didn't stop once. Bam! The reason for that is I don't want this line to be disjointed. So I try to pull them in one fell swoop. Even if the line gets a little thin or a little thick, I'd rather that happen than I have joints where I start and stop the line. It's just my thing. If you need to start and stop, do you, boo. It's your painting. You're supposed to have fun, not make yourself crazy. All right, you know what I'm going to say. If you need to, pause. But I'm going to keep on carrying on here because I am really enjoying this sort of Zen moment. So pause as you need to. I'm just going to keep going over lines and talking about it. I try not to make my lines perfect on purpose. This is not a computer generated or a digital piece of art. This is hand done. And I want it to reflect that. If I needed every line to be perfect, we could do this in Procreate and sell prints. But I appreciate that you can see the strokes and the lines and the movement. I know that sounds all artsy fartsy, and it kind of is. But that's what I dig about art is that, you can tell, or at least handmade art, you can tell that somebody put their hands on this. People put their hands on digital art as well. I guess I just better stop before I make myself a bigger hole here. Okay, so we're going to keep working our way around. With my little swirly guys, you can put your outer segment line in on any of these first. I'm going to do that on this one because those little swirly guys really come off of those segments. So it's nice to have that there sort of as an anchor. And then second verse, same as the first. Just keep working my way around. There we go. Whoop. Okay, I figured out how to explain what I was trying to say. Yes, digital art is handmade. But the nature of digital art affords you tools that create lines that a human hand can rarely recreate. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So it's really, like cousins versus sisters. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, little swirls. Don't come at me, okay? I love digital art, but I like the whimsical, imperfect nature of putting brush or pen to canvas. There we go. Now, I can add in a few extras that I didn't draw before with the chalk, just to sort of fill in that space. We can do that at any point. Connect some to others. You can get as ornate or as simple as you want to be. So, I don't want to get too carried away. Okay, there we go. A few little extra wiggles in there, just for fun. Candy corn. Now you can see my lines are starting to fade away. I'm not going to go over them again. I am just going to be grateful I don't have that chalk mess because I can still see where the shapes are. But rounded corners, divide it, color in the top and the bottom, leaving that middle open with the black showing through. And on the ones that are partial, you may only see one section of gold and one section of black. And that's okay. Oh, I keep having to remind myself to talk. This is one of those projects that you can just zen out to. So don't let me stop you. Pause if you need to. All right. Now this section is on the edge. I don't have a full view, so got a lot of little partial ones I'm doing here. And that's okay. It's all okay. Sorry, my hand's in the way again. Oi. I'm gonna have to figure out these camera angles. Okay, almost there. Just a few more. Whoop, did you see that? I had a little blob come out. Of course you didn't see it. My big hand was in the way. Let me do another one on purpose. Let's see, right here. Can you see there? If you push, you may get a big blob. That's okay. Pull through it and turn that into the bottom or the top section of the candy corn, just like that. There we go. All right, pause. Get yourself caught up. Do not wipe off your chalk. Get a drink, go stretch, relax, go to bed, come back tomorrow, whatever works for you, do you. I am going to show you next how to do the stems with the stem with the leaves and a few vines, and then we'll let it dry. We'll wipe it all off and take a look at our fabulous creation. So pace yourself, and I will see you when you're ready. All right, I am going to try moving myself this way so that hopefully my big hand isn't in the way. I should have thought of that earlier, but you know, we live and we learn. We live and we learn. I thank you for your patience. A little thing to show you. I don't know. There we go. See a little splotch of green or gold? That's gold. Words are hard. That little bit of gold. I'm going to just leave it, let it dry, and touch it up with some black once everything is good to go. But let's talk about our stem. So what I want to point out about the stem, let's look at the original one real quick. I know everything's upside down. Sorry. The squiggly lines, I made it almost like a Zentangle. There you go. Let's turn it right side up so that it's not confusing. There you go. So I try to continue the line all the way through, but some get a little closer, some get a little further away, some cross over, they get wiggly, and it gives you sort of that ropey texture that we know the pumpkin stem to be. We also know never to touch it because it will pop right off and your pumpkin will fall and break. Yes, I have trauma. Okay, so before we start, remember we don't need that smooth edge. So I'm going to outline it with just a little bit of wiggle to my line. And I'm doing both the left and right side of the pumpkin stem right up to where it just gets really comes around and becomes a vine. So just about there, both sides. And then starting up here at the top, I'm just going to do a couple of wiggly lines, working my way all the way down toward that pumpkin. And then I'm just going to start bringing in lines from all sorts of different points. Just breaking up these sections into little bits, but they all go down toward the base of the pumpkin. Just keep dividing with wiggly lines until you're happy with it. There we go. So you get that really textured effect, and it's also a little bit like a wink and a nod to a Zentangle, which is one of those sort of meditative styles of art. Okay, I should do a piece like that, a full piece. Let's do a leaf. I'm just going to do my outer lines here. Just this outer edges. And then divide it in half. And use those V's again. Big sections makes things easy. You could do curved lines again if you like. Do you, boo? It's your pumpkin. It's going to hang in your house. Do what makes you happy. Your art is not for anyone else. It's for you. Well, okay, correction. If you're giving it as a gift and you want it to go that way, I get that. But, put a little bit of you in it. Here we go. Just going over these lines. Seems like I'm rambling nonsensically today. Sorry, don't know what's going on. I'm just in a mood. Not even drunk, it's daytime. All right, there we go. Little connections. And then finally, I just want to do a couple of little viney swirls here. So I'm just going to drag a little line, do a few loops. Let them just sort of squiggle off. As few or as many as you like. Just little corkscrewy, curly lines. All right, you guys know what to do. Hit that pause button. Take your time. You've got an image there to work with. You've got some inspiration. I'm going to clean this up and be right back, and we'll talk about the final piece. Well, that was fun, right? I love these sort of pieces because you can just take your time. It's like meditating. You can mix it up. You can do one pattern. You can do many patterns. It's really just a highly customizable piece. And I'm sorry, I'm like dipping around trying to figure out which way to go with the camera. Okay, so here we go. Clean it up. Once it dries, let it dry like overnight, I would say. Or hit it with the blow dryer and then let it dry, cool off. You can take some just tap water, a little bit of just soap on a clean rag and wipe it down and then just rinse it. I don't submerge it. I try to keep the water only on the surface because, if it gets on the back here, it can absorb and warp it. So just a very gentle flow and then, just rinse it off. Or you can use a damp rag by itself. You don't have to use any soap. But if you want to seal it, you can always just brush some Mod Podge over it. Or I also like to use clear acrylic spray paint. It's cheap and I get a lot of use out of one can. You pay less than $5, goes forever. Just remember not to do it on a windy day so you don't end up with a bunch of stuff stuck to your painting. All right, you guys. So that's it. I hope you had a good time. I hope I get to paint with you again. Sorry if it got a little weird and goofy today. It's just sort of that day. And I'll see you again real soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye. Happy Halloween.